My name is Isabella Lock. I am a second year student at the University of Manchester studying Spanish and Japanese, and I am an anorexia nervosa survivor. So when I was doing research for my TED Talk, I discovered that there are quite a few TED Talks out there about eating disorders and what they really are. And there are so many unique and inspirational stories of survivors of anorexia and eating disorders, which I encourage you all to listen to. But today I'm not here to tell you my story. I'm here to tell you about what you, as people around the anorexic, can do to create a safe environment. So this talk will be split into 3 sections. I will begin by talking about how we can prevent anorexia through early intervention, then how we can support an anorexic during recovery, and lastly, talking about the stigma around eating disorders and mental illness in general. So firstly, I want to talk about the importance of early intervention. I believe that we as friends, as family, as teachers, as whoever we are in society, have a moral obligation as a community to take care of each other. Now, anorexia nervosa, just like any other illness, is best treated as soon as possible. So according to the NHS website, signs and symptoms of anorexia include dramatic weight loss, lying about what one has eaten, and strict rituals around food. I really want to emphasize that these aren't the only symptoms, and if you don't have these symptoms, it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have anorexia. These are just a couple of examples. And I could honestly go on and on for hours talking about all the many symptoms because it's infinite. Each person has their own experience. So I suggest that you do your own research and learn about the many symptoms out there. And it's important that we know these symptoms so that if we notice any of these signs, then we intervene. Because despite the fact that anorexia nervosa has the highest mortality rate of any mental illness, statistics show that only 1/3 of anorexics receive treatment. Now that means that 2/3 are left at risk of death. So that is why it's important that we intervene early so that we can save lives. Now I want to talk a bit about my experience with intervening so that I could get treatment. So my eating disorder began at the age of 14, and when it initially started, several of my friends actually approached me in concern of my extreme weight loss, and initially I brushed it off and just justified it by saying that I had just been eating healthier and working out more. And soon other people began to approach my parents as well. I had my friends' parents, my teachers and family members all asking my parents if everything was okay with me. Now, eventually a teacher advised my mother that I go see a GP. And so we went to a GP, and this example is exactly why talking about anorexia is so important, because there's still a major stigma around it. Now, the first GP told me that it was a phase. He told me that at the age of 14, I was just at an age where girls lose weight and start to care a little bit more about their body image. And so that's all it was. It was just a phase. But I'm very lucky that my mother did not give up. She took me to another GP who, in contrary to the other one, told me that I was actually on the road to developing a serious eating disorder. Now, she warned me if I did not restore the weight lost over the summer, I would be referred to an eating disorder clinic. Unfortunately, over the summer, I lost a significant amount of weight and was eventually referred to a clinic and diagnosed with anorexia nervosa. I want to emphasize that people noticed symptoms. Sorry, I'm having some back feedback from the mic. Is that just me, Rebecca?
It is a little bit, but now there's no reverb, don't worry.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So people noticed 10 months before my diagnosis. They noticed 10 months that I had these symptoms of extreme weight loss amongst other symptoms. Now, during 10 months, a lot can happen. For me, my periods stopped. And although my periods have thankfully returned to this day, I still don't know if that extreme weight loss has affected my fertility. I got weaker, skinnier, and really, really tired every day. And above all, my mental health deteriorated and I became engulfed in this eating disorder and all of the irrational thoughts that came with it. And still to this day, I get irrational thoughts on a daily basis. And I wonder today if someone had intervened earlier, would I still be suffering from as many thoughts as I do today? However, I am lucky. I am still alive and I'm very grateful to be doing this TED Talk today. But there are unfortunately many that do not make it through those 10 months. Now, perhaps you're wondering, well, why did it take so long for people to intervene? And I was curious too. So in preparation for this talk, I actually asked my parents and friends why. Now, my parents explained to me that they did not intervene earlier because they didn't know anything about anorexia and did not even consider that I would have such a mental illness. My friends, on the other hand, were aware of the illness and actually reported it to a teacher who told them that they would only intervene if things worsened. Now, they reported it twice more, and eventually the teachers did something after those 3 times of reporting it. Now, when I discovered these reasons, I realized the importance of awareness. If my parents had known more about anorexia nervosa, they would have intervened earlier. The same with the teachers. If they had known about the severity of anorexia, they too would have intervened earlier. Now, I want to stress again that anorexia has the highest mortality rate of all mental illnesses. We are not just talking about mental health here with anorexia, we are also talking about physical health. The early intervention is not just important, it actually saves lives. So I want to say that if you know anyone who you think might have the slightest symptom or sign of anorexia, intervene in any way possible. Approach them and ask if everything is okay. Seek professional help for them or ask a professional as to how you can help. Report it to their parents or their teachers. As I said, early intervention is important, but it's not just important, it saves lives. So the next part, I'm going to talk about how to support somebody going through anorexia nervosa. And this is, again, purely based on my own experience. I don't speak for everyone who's had experience with anorexia. So getting straight into it, one of the most important things is ensuring that you maintain a healthy relationship with them. It is very easy when supporting an anorexic to develop a patient-therapist relationship. So in other words, they talk to you about how they feel and you listen in return and perhaps offer advice. But at the end of the day, anorexic sufferers need you as a friend or as a father or as a sister, whoever you are to them, that is how they need you, not as a therapist. So based on my own experience, I know that I recovered from anorexia, not just because of my amazing team of NHS professionals, but also thanks to my friends who made me laugh when times were tough, or my parents who supported me and stayed strong for me. I remember when suffering from anorexia in my worst days, the one thing I always wished for was for everything to go back to normal. And when my friends made me laugh, or when somebody just hugged me, or just the little things, that was my little piece of normal. And that's sometimes all they need from you. My next point is being aware of irrational versus rational talk. Again, I can't speak for all, this is purely my experience, but I know that I often spoke my irrational thoughts. I would say things that are perhaps a bit disturbing or really angry or just not very nice things to people. And that's a mix of things. It's because of that anxiety around food that was in my head, and also because of the malnourishment. Because I wasn't eating right, my brain wasn't in the right headspace. So I was saying things that I didn't mean to my family members and to other loved ones. And it's important that you don't take it personally. It's the anorexia speaking. Just give them space and time to process their thoughts and let the irrational ones pass. It's not them speaking, it's their anorexia. And finally, I want to say it's not a steady road to recovery. There will be relapses, there will be dark days, and there will be times when you kind of want to walk out on them. But I really say, please do not give up on them. Of course, take care of your own mental health and give them support as much as you can without putting your own mental health at risk. But don't give up on them, basically, is what I want to say, because I know in my situation, I became so obsessed with losing weight that the idea of death didn't even scare me. You become so engulfed in that mindset with this obsession to lose weight and to gain control of your body, that even death in my situation didn't even scare me. So if my family and my friends had given up on me, I honestly don't know if I'd be here today. So it's so important that you don't give up on them, and that you support them in whatever way that you can. Now, finally, I want to talk to you about the most important thing in this speech is the stigma around the anorexia and how we can tackle this stigma. Now, the most common stigma that still impacts me to this day, I'm 20 now, this all happened years ago, but it still impacts me today, is the stigma that anorexia is a lifestyle choice, like veganism or going to bed early. Now, according to the dictionary, a lifestyle choice is a choice a person makes about how to live and how to behave according to their attitudes, tastes, and values. Now, I agree that I did choose to exercise more frequently. I agree that I did choose to cut out chocolate, and I agree that I did choose to eat less at mealtimes. But I did not choose to develop a fear of chocolate or to become so scared of gaining weight that I forced myself to do sit-ups in bed before sleeping or count the calories of everything I ate. Anorexia nervosa manifested within me slowly but surely, which I did not consciously choose to happen. It is now 2021, and after the global pandemic, well, it's still going on, but after this whole crazy year that we've had, awareness around mental illness is, I'd say, bigger than ever. But it is time that we start to consider anorexia and all other mental illnesses the same way we consider physical illness. In other words, we did not choose it, but rather it happened to us. Now, an example that I like to say is perhaps you choose to go skiing, and during that skiing, you break your leg. You didn't choose to break your leg, you chose to go skiing. The same way I said, yes, I did choose to exercise more, but I did not choose for a whole eating disorder to develop and manifest within me to the point that I was putting my own life at risk. It's not a choice, it's something that happened to me. Now, this particular stigma has made my life after recovery incredibly difficult, and still to this day, I am trying to forgive myself for something that isn't my fault. When I began to recover and recognize that my thoughts were not rational, I felt so ashamed and guilty for putting everyone around me through it. During my recovery, I have never seen my family around me and my friends so upset until my eating disorder happened. And I would blame myself, and I still sometimes blame myself every day for putting my loved ones through this. I also felt that I was using NHS money that could have been used for someone with cancer or a physical illness. But above all, I felt and still feel guilty for putting my younger self through this when there are others who are not as fortunate as me to have a healthy body. But it was not my fault. Just like my body, sometimes my mind will get a little bit poorly too. However, the stigma has still stuck in my head to this day, and it sometimes makes me believe that I chose this illness, which is obviously not the case, but that's how much it can affect someone. So I'd like to quote a line from A Beautiful Boy, which is about a teenage boy with a drug addiction. And he says, "I don't feel like I have a disease. This isn't like cancer. This is my choice. I put myself here." Now, sometimes the stigma around mental illness can get to my head so much that that's exactly how I feel. However, I want to emphasize that eating disorders, alongside all other mental illnesses, should be treated the same way as cancer and other physical illnesses. It is not a lifestyle choice. Now, before I end this talk, I would like to say one thing. When I recovered, I decided to use my voice to raise awareness about eating disorders. I spoke to my year group about my experience. I wrote for The Independent, and now I'm doing a TED talk about it. And I have received so many kind messages from friends and family and even strangers about how inspirational my story is. And it's made me realize that talking about my anorexia does not just raise awareness, but it also inspires other people to use their own voice to talk about personal topics such as mental illness. So if I can face my biggest fears and talk about them, then so can you. Because the truth is that with any mental illness is to talk about it, because the more we talk about it, the less scary it becomes. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk.